Asteroid City does not exist. It is an imaginary drama created expressly for this broadcast. The characters are fictional, the text hypothetical, the events an apocryphal fabrication. But together they present an authentic account of the inner workings of a modern theatrical production.
Okay, so I've watched Asteroid City, I think 3 or 4 times now. I really like it. I liked it from the first time I watched it, but it took me a couple times watching it to feel like I really got it to sink in. So Asteroid City is a really cool movie, but I think there's a slight problem. And that's, so far, a lot of the things I've heard people say about the film is that, there's a people who go to the small town of Asteroid City for the Stargazers convention, and they see an alien, and they deal with the connotations and repercussions of that. So that's not incorrect, and I think that's good, and, they talk about the themes of family and grief and all those sorts of things, and, lack of control and quarantine, and there's a lot of things you can talk about in that context. The shortcoming here, I think, is that this doesn't really acknowledge half of the film. So obviously, Asteroid City, it's a television broadcast about the writing and preparation of a play, and then the depiction of that actual play. I think partially because the play itself is depicted in color and it's widescreen and it's more kind of literal, whereas kind of the black and white section of the film has a lot more surrealist moments, like props aren't there and the sets are fake and things like that. It's easy to assume the color section of the film is what's like quote unquote real, or what the heart of the story is. But again, I think we're missing a lot there because so much of the film takes place in the other sections. What made me think about this more is the most recent time I was watching Asteroid City. This most recent time when I was watching Asteroid City, I was watching the scene where the Brainiac kids are all sitting in a circle and they're playing the name game. While I was watching it, it felt like, formally, in terms of cinematography and editing, it was pretty bizarre and pretty haphazard, and it would cut from different weird angles, from inside and outside and across and moving. And in a way that's, pretty typical for Wes Anderson. But as I watched the scene, it really felt like it was a pointless scene. Now, obviously, you can argue about the merit of different scenes in different films and whether or not they're just giving setting or developing character or pushing the plot forward. But I just had this feeling like it was pointless. And the more I thought about that, the more that the movie went on, I felt like there were a lot of scenes in the color section of the film that didn't really do anything. And this idea kind of kept ruminating in my head until the moment where, in the black and white section of the film, they asked the writer what the play is about, and he doesn't have a good answer.
What's it about, the play?
Infinity, and I don't know what else.
And I think you can look at that and you can be like, okay, like, how do we interpret this? And there's lots of meaning you could find or mine out of that. But my interpretation is that Asteroid City, as depicted in kind of the color section of this film, is not a good play. Now, I'm not trying to say this is the one true version of Asteroid City, or this is the best way to interpret it, or this is what the director really meant. To be honest, I don't really care what the director really meant. I think it's totally valid to try to imagine that, or to look or watch interviews or watch commentary. But I think there's a deeper issue here where film criticism is a little stale, and I think sometimes it's just very routine and it's very repetitive, and it's just, what did the filmmakers expect, or the writers, or whoever the creator of whatever piece of art it is, like, what did they intend it to mean? And then we look at kind of general themes. Again, Asteroid City, you could say, is about grief, or lack of control, or whatever you want to say. So yeah, I don't think that's incorrect, but here I want to just play around with new or different ways to interpret films for this film specifically, but also because in general, I think we need to get a little more creative with our criticism and analysis when it comes to filmmaking. Now, this framing device isn't really new for Wes Anderson. In his earlier films like Fantastic Mr. Fox, we have a storybook beginning, but it wasn't until the Grand Budapest Hotel that he started taking it a little more seriously. Now, the Grand Budapest Hotel, for everyone that's seen it, starts out with a girl who goes to the grave of an author, and then it cuts to when he was alive, and then it cuts to when he was younger, meeting an older person who cuts to when he was younger. It's kind of a complicated beginning. But it only takes up a couple minutes at the beginning of the film and end of the film. So I think it's easy for people to kind of write it off as just like a stylized texturing of the film and not really read into what that means. So he did it again in a more extreme way in The French Dispatch, and I think actually in a more alienating way, because I think a lot of people watch The French Dispatch and they feel like it's all over the place, or they can never really connect with the narrative or things like that. So regardless of whether or not it works or is effective in those two movies, we see that this is something that Wes Anderson likes to do. And I think that it goes a lot deeper than just being a stylized move. So with that in mind, as I've established, when I watch Asteroid City, it feels like, in some sense, the color section of the film is a little meaningless. There's lots of scenes that don't go anywhere. There's threads and subplots that are set up and then never really pay off. And most of the really emotional or dramatic scenes happen in the black and white section of the film. If we take my idea that the play of Asteroid City, written by Conrad Earp, played by Edward Norton, is a bad play, what are the implications of that? What are the questions and tensions and drama that come as a result of that?
I mean, I think I know now what I realize we are.
Okay.
Two catastrophically wounded people who don't express the depths of their pain because we don't want to.
In the first half of the film, the actor Jones Hall goes to meet with Conrad Earp about playing Augie Steenbeck in his play Asteroid City. He auditions and receives the role. And at this point he asks,
"Why does Augie burn his hand on the quickie griddle?"
And he doesn't really get a very satisfying answer.
Well, I don't even know myself, to tell you the truth.
This comes back into play again in the play Asteroid City when he actually burns his hand on the cookie grill, which we can tell he actually does because the actress Mercedes Ford is confused and kind of breaks character for a moment. And then finally, in the climax of the film, when all chaos breaks loose,
"Why does Augie burn his hand on the quickie griddle?" I still don't understand the play.
He's overwhelmed with this question again and he leaves the stage. I think this question, why does he burn his hand on the quickie grill, is actually fundamental to the dramatic question of this film. I think Asteroid City is a movie about acting, or alternatively, it's a movie about performance. I think that in the film Asteroid City, the play Asteroid City is showcased as an example of a performative piece that these actors have to put themselves into and have to play the characters. And they have to play characters that have exhibited grief and trauma and different issues and complicated circumstances, but they have to do it without really much context or understanding. I think this is probably a standard experience for actors, having to play roles that they may want to or not want to do, that they have to get paid to do, that there are deadlines for, with all these obstacles they have to overcome. But inside of all that, they still have to give a compelling performance.
I play him as an alien, actually. I play him as a metaphor. That's my interpretation.
Metaphor for what?
I don't know yet. We don't pin it down.
So I think the drama and the contrast and the ideas of this film are these actors trying to understand and embody these characters without all of the context or things that they need. Or even with the context, I think this is just a challenging experience. With this paradigm in mind of watching the film, suddenly the black and white sections of the film aren't just kind of a stylized comedic setting, but it's the heart of the film. And the color section, far from being just meaningless or filler like we previously thought the black and white section was, now becomes the setting on which the actors are trying to embody these performances. So that's the gist of my theory about how I like to watch Asteroid City. Now maybe you're saying to yourself, hey, I watched Asteroid City and I really liked the color section. I thought it was meaningful and compelling, and I thought there were, these powerful themes. I don't think that's invalid. I think the reason why I like my personal reading of the film is I feel like it gives us more to engage with. So if we say that Asteroid City is just about people dealing with grief, I feel like that's almost a reductive process of understanding the film. I think too much of our analysis is reductive and it is simplifying, and it's taking characters and ideas and style and filmmaking and all these tools and elements and trying to reduce it down to an overarching theme or an overarching idea that we can comprehend and grasp and not feel overwhelmed. But I think sometimes in a Wes Anderson film, he wants you to feel overwhelmed or confused. The reason why I like my specific approach is because instead of just thinking about ideas or themes like grief, we get instead to see the process of people trying to embody those ideas. We get to see actors who are supposed to present grief, but we get to see the inner workings of how they want to do that, or how they want to perform that, or how they want to do that in the context of a production and all these other obstacles. I think sometimes in life, when we look at art as these kind of general vague themes, it's easy to say, this piece of art right here is about courage and loyalty and patriotism, or whatever, this theme that we want to attach to it. But I think the more we do that, the more we engage with those concepts of courage and love and family or whatever the theme is, and the less we actually engage with the art piece itself. With the process of watching Asteroid City in the context of acting and performance and the challenges that come with that, we get to look at how people embody grief. Rather than just thinking about grief abstractly, we get to look at how these actors choose to embody that or choose to perform that. So is this what Wes Anderson was thinking of when he made the film? I don't know. Honestly, I don't really care. Because for me, coming up with these ideas and testing these ideas out and thinking about it while watching the film made the experience more enjoyable and fulfilling and engaging. But I hope at the end of the day that we're all watching these films and trying to be creative with our interpretation, or trying to come up with new ways to watch them and new ways to analyze them. And I think that when we do that, we'll have a more fulfilling, enjoyable time.
I still don't understand the play.
Doesn't matter. Just keep telling the story. You're doing them right.